Hello.
Hi. So let me turn off the transcription. Hi,
Hello.
Susie. Nice to
Hi,
see
dear.
you here.
Nice.
Um, So let me remind you that I'm going to speak Portuguese. Ao participar desse evento, você concede à editora autorização gratuita para o uso de sua imagem, nome, interpretação e voz, permitindo que a reunião seja gravada para posterior utilização e exibição a qualquer tempo e lugar, a critério da editora. É importante deixar claro isso. The purpose of this group discussion is to talk about the TKT CLIL, the prep course. Today we are going to do part 2 of the course. I'll mediate this meeting. However, I would like you to participate and share your experiences. I will be asking for volunteers to answer some questions. To get a chance to talk, you can open your mic, you can write in the chat, you can do the way you prefer to do it. Our time frame is from 5 to 6:30. And at the end of the meeting, there will be a link for you to get a certificate. Did everyone get the certificate from our last meeting? Everything okay? If by any chance you haven't received yours, let me know and we'll talk. As you also know, our next meeting is on November. So here you see the next dates. And for today, we have lesson 2, lesson preparation, and you learn about planning a lesson and a series of lessons, languagements of subject, content, and accompanying tasks, resources, including multimedia and visual organizers, material selection, and activity types and their purposes. I'd like to start by asking you, what are learning outcomes? What comes to your mind when you think about learning outcomes? So this is your moment to join in this discussion. Yes, Kasia. Of course, Kasia, our top student. Go
The
on.
results of the process of learning.
Good one. Ricardo is typing something. Maybe he could complement what Kasia has said. We have the results. Anyone else would like to share? Objectives students must achieve in the end of the learning process. Perfect. That's what we expect from learning outcomes. As you can see, they are descriptions of specific knowledge, skills, or expertise that the learner will get from a learning activity. Yes, learning results expectations. That's perfect, Alex. Thank you. And what about examples of learning outcomes? When you think about a lesson you have taught, what kind of examples can we have in a learning outcome? By the end of the lesson, the students will be better able to do what? Perhaps speak about past experiences related to traveling. Is it a possibility? Do you think it can be a learning outcome? Yes, Alex, they will be able to count from 1 to 10. That's a learning outcome. That's perfect. Maybe they'll be able to count fruits. They'll be able to count from 1 to 10, and then include the topic you might be teaching. That's a good example. Yeah, Liana, that's good. Ask and answer about personal information, identifying and name animals. Those are also examples of learning outcomes. I have here an example. As you can see here, when we talk about CLIL, remember that we are talking about content and language integrated. So when you think about art, this is what most learners should know. They'll be able to and be aware of. These are examples of art. So the perspective is a way of showing the 3D world in 2 dimensions. They'll be able to demonstrate perspective in a landscape. This is the objective that the teacher wants to achieve in the end. And they will be aware that the further away things are, the smaller they look. This is the perspective of art. When we think about geography, using maps, measure distance, math, sequence of numbers. So in the example Alex gave here, counting is a sequence of numbers, right? Science, how to conduct a fair test. That's another example. So when we think about the TKT CLIL, you'll be asked to answer learning outcomes related to one specific subject. It's not going to be only about language. We have to consider that. So what is the purpose of learning outcomes? They focus on what most learners should know and be able to, at the end of the lesson, figure that out. Most learners should be able to achieve them. Why are learning outcomes useful for teachers? Who can answer that question? You can open your mic, you can type in the chat. Why is it important for us to know the outcomes of that lesson? Yeah, you said it all. It's a guide, is an assessment. Priscilla, would you like to share something?
Yes, I believe that when we are aware of what the outcome is supposed to be, we can prepare better our classes, first of all. And after that, we can analyze whether the students achieved that goal. And also we can, using the outcome they gave us, we can think about planning the further activities also.
Yes, perfect. That's really what it is. And do you think students should be aware of the outcomes of that lesson? Do you think it's important for them to know what the objective of that lesson is? Yes. Students should be included throughout the entire process of the lesson. So as you all said it, they can be used as a checklist for giving feedback, the following lesson. They make assessment clear, and students, they should know they will be able what they will be able to achieve, and they give learners goals so they can check progress. It's not only during the test that we gave them that they will be able to know what the score they have so far. They have to do it continuously. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for you as a teacher to figure out that that student might have a problem in that particular area, right? So thank you all for sharing that. And what do you need to consider when planning a lesson? We have talked about learning outcomes. Those are essentials. What else do you include in a lesson plan? Sharing time. Ooh. Priscilla, would you like to share again? Do you include materials in your lesson plan? What materials you're going to use it? How about background knowledge? Glenda said it. Yes, we need to know what students know, what they have learned in the previous lesson, and what they will learn in the next lesson as well. So background knowledge, materials. What about types of interactions I'm going to have in that lesson? Is it important to plan for it? Yes, Cassia. Resources, the subjects we are going to study, the methodology, how you're going to assess if that student learned at the end of the lesson. How are you going to test them? Remember, we cannot only do it during test time. We have to do it throughout the entire lesson. So what are my teaching aims? It's important for you to set boundaries for yourself as well. If you have a vice of language of saying, okay, 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 all the time, maybe your teaching aim would be, your personal aim would be try to use less okay in my lessons. I know that I have that vice of language. Okay. I say okay all the time, and I need to polish myself. I need to try and use it less. And when I am aware of what I'm doing, I can do my personal aim as well. So what will learners know and be able to at the end of the lesson that they didn't know or couldn't before the lesson? What subject? That's what Cassia has said. What communication will take place? Are they going to speak about a trip they have taken? Which thinking and learning skills will be developed? What tasks will learners do? Cognition skills? Yes, Alex. And what language support will be needed for communication of content, thinking, and learning? So this is also important to plan in a lesson, which materials and resources, cross-curricular links, internet links. We cannot do just open Google and try to search for the topic you are trying to teach at that moment. We know that, so you have to plan before time. And how they will be evaluated. Will I consider that if they create a sentence related to that topic, does that mean that they have achieved that goal of the lesson? How am I going to evaluate if they have got it or not? So we have here outcomes related to specific competence, so communicative. If my student can express and interpret facts orally and in writing, linguistic, that means in that lesson, my students will have achieved that communicative skill. Linguistic, can use language. Artistic, can understand different artistic forms. Digital can communicate using technological information. Mathematical can reason and solve problems. Social can understand social context. These are all examples of learning outcomes. I always try to use my student can do that at the end of the lesson. So can count from 1 to 10. That's an objective from that lesson. And here are the competences that we are giving as an example. So what they know, they'll be able to and be aware. These are also other examples. Identify and name properties of a range of materials. This is what they will have achieved by the end of the lesson. Examples of communications about familiar classroom objects. Pointing and naming materials. If they can point at the pencil, for example, this is a way to identify if they have got the subject. Labeling materials, writing down the names in certain images. This is a way that we can evaluate and know that the outcome has gone through their heads. Resources, bags, objects. This is an example of lesson planning, right? I have here a mock exam. Do you know how it works? I'm going to give you 10 seconds for you to think and read about the sentence. And then you type your answer, what you think is the correct answer. Can you answer right away when I show you the questions? Yes or no? No. You have to wait 10 seconds to give a chance for everyone to read it. So let's see an example. There are 6 items in this exercise. Let's do them one at a time. Focus on question 1 first. After the 10 seconds are up, I'll say it. You should write your answer in the chat box. So look at the CLIL lesson plan. Texts, resources, worksheets, and website. Which column does it go? Is it learning outcome, procedure, communication, cognition, resources, or assessment? What do you think? Go. Yes, Kasia. Letter E. E, yes. It is letter E, is materials. So resources, letter E. What about number 2? Comparing and contrasting. Reasoning from evidence. Which column does it go? Wait 10 seconds. You can answer. No ideas? We have an assortment of answers. Some teachers think it's letter D, letter F, letter C, D, F. Comparing and contrasting. Reasoning from evidence. It is letter D, thinking skills. What kind of skills they will be able to. Mariani, it's okay. Better late than ever. Yeah, than never. Yes. So number 2 is letter D, is cognition. Number 3, to know about events in the past, to be able to ask historical questions. Which column is it? You can answer it. Letter C, is it communication or learning outcomes? Who wrote, the people who wrote letter C, could you maybe give a reason why you think is letter C? Fernanda, would you able to explain why you think is letter C? Or the people who got A, why do you think it's A? Yeah? Oops. Because be able to ask. It is letter A. Students' abilities, to know, to be able to. Number 3, it is letter A, it's learning outcomes. 4, learners can use sources to find evidence. They can use sources. What answer is it? So in this case, this word there, can, is not related to they are able to, at the end of the lesson, to complete that. No, it means no, it can do statements. Sorry, I think I got it. Assessment, can use sources to find evidence. Let's skip that one before we finish. Discuss how the ship was powered using source A. Number 5, what answer do you think? The black label is on them. Sorry.
Yes, Natalia, I don't know, for me it appears like that, the black label with the camera and microphone and hands up and talking, it's exactly, yeah, and so I can't read.
Sorry, I can read it for you. Yeah, maybe it's the
So
device.
I just can read, discuss how the ship was, and then I can't read the rest because it's on top. I don't know if for everyone, I don't know how to take it off. Can I?
Can you move your mouse, your cursor?
Yeah, I've been doing that all the time,
But
and
it
I
doesn't
can't.
work.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep doing. Yeah.
Number 5, it is letter C. People answered letter C. And the last one is the last possible answer. Number 6, ask low and high order question to elicit vocabulary in source material. This would be letter B, procedure. So in number 4, can do statements is the same as this one. Let's go back to this. Do you see can express, can use, can understand, can communicate? This would be example, is not working, Miriam. Yeah. Thank you for the help. This would be assessment. At the end of the lesson, students can do that. If they can do that, it means that they have reached the outcome. The outcome itself would be to be able to ask historical questions. But the assessment, the how you're going to do it is they can use sources to find evidence, all right? Let's brainstorm language demands. What type of text type genre? What comes to your mind when you think about these three words? Write down on the chat. Do you think of novels? Types of text. Who can help me with this? No one? We have to consider, Priscilla, thank you. Letters, emails, text messages, recipes, diaries, poems, essays. That's great. But they are all a type inside those 6 type genres. What is a recipe? A recipe is a step-by-step of what you should do it, right? Is it considered a report, persuasion, explanation, instruction, discussion, or recount? The recipe. It is an instruction. So we have to consider the broad subject of type genres we have, and then we have the spectrum inside each of them. So a poem is possibly a recount of something that happened. And then we have a letter. Maybe this letter is about explaining a situation you had, and then you are asking for a refund. This is explaining why you want a refund, right? Discussions, recounts, all of those genres that you have shared is inside those 6, right? A report, an example of a report is in a newspaper, right? What about persuasion? Where can you find a lot of persuasion in a text that convinces you to do something? All right, politician speeches. Ana Zuza ads. Perfect. Advertisement. That's where people are trying to persuade you to buy something, right? What about explanation? Where can we find explanation? Encyclopedia, Wikipedia, all the pedias in the world, they are explaining something. Instructions, we already seen it, recipe. Discussion, we have an argument, and a recount, a biography, right? I'd like to ask you for 1 minute, 1 second. I'm back. I'm sorry. I apologize. You know how it is, home office and all. I had to pause it. So mock test time. You all know about the concept of everything we have seen, the types of genres. Now, I have here genre extracts, and you have the purpose of the text is to explain something, retell, persuade, argue, to present a balanced argument, to describe characteristics, or to express a point of view formally. So you see a type of text and you have to say what is the purpose of that text. Do you answer right away, or do you wait a little bit for the others to read? We wait a little bit. Yeah. Are you ready? Go. You can answer. Is it letter D or letter C? Who can give me reasons? Why is it letter C and why is it letter D? What keyword? It can be both. Ricardo is saying both. I'm not sure. Letter E. Kasia is saying imperative forms. Eat. So eat breakfast. It is letter C. We are trying to persuade you to eat breakfast. The imperative over there. If you miss breakfast, you will definitely lack energy by midday. So you shouldn't do that. What should you do? You should eat breakfast. We are trying to persuade you. But it could be, what's the other letter? Letter D, to present a balanced argument. Is it an argument when you don't have the interaction with the other person? He's not inviting you to say, what's your opinion about breakfast, right? They're only presenting one option, trying to persuade you. That's why it's not letter D for now. Let's go to the next topic. This essay will present an argument for preserving urban habitats. What's the letter? You can answer. You can go. Letter A. Letter E. This essay will present an argument. An argument for preserving urban habitats. Nobody said letter D, right? Nobody said letter F. An essay. An essay is a type of formal writing. And then, what point of view are you presenting? Preserving urban habitats. All right, this one was a little bit tricky. Nobody got it right. So maybe keep it in mind for next time. It makes sense when you see the answer, right? It's always like that. Number 3. Nature was our playground. We sat on flat stones, lay down the same, and faced large rocks. You can answer. What's the letter for that text? What verb gives away? What word there gives away that you might consider that is letter B? Yes, Priscilla. Past forms, Cassia. Great. Nature was our background. We sat on flat stone, slid, got used to it. This is retelling a fact, an event. So this is our clue. Number 4. You can answer it. Create a document, store it electronically on a disk. So everybody thinks it's letter E to describe characteristics. It is. Number 5. You can answer it. Yeah, it is letter A. So in this case, there wasn't one extra option. We did not use letter D. So we have to be careful while choosing the options. If we consider that this is an entire question, then you see why letter F would be the only possible answer for that question that was very difficult. If you have all sentences, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in only one question, then you can eliminate the others, right? And you can see that letter F was the only possible answer because we have better options for letter A and letter D as you were thinking about before. Resources. What is a useful resource that you use in your classroom other than your book? What is a resource that cannot miss, cannot not be there? A map, flashcards, realia, videos, PowerPoint presentations. Nobody said songs. Songs is a resource, right? Digital book. Great. Google Tools, Kahoot. If I could include Kahoot in all my lessons, my students would love it. Yeah. Music books, right. The candidates for this particular area, they're tested on their knowledge on of visual organizers and multimedia. And this is all related to CLIL. We are going to see examples of it. All right. And examples of a specific language and concepts related to visual organizers. And in which context do we use them? All right, let's see a couple of examples. Do you know the name of letter A and the name of letter B? Venn diagram and tree diagram. Perfect. Those are two examples of diagrams. But where, in what type of lesson could I use a tree diagram? Who can tell me? Yes, Cassia. When we are talking about our genealogical family, the tree, and we have that father and mother related, and then related, no, sorry, by marriage, and then the sons, the kids, maybe brothers and sisters, we have a tree diagram. Food chain, right? What about a Venn diagram? Where could you include in it? Cassia.
Once I used a Venn diagram where we're talking about farm and city. And then we use this diagram to put the things that are in common between the city and the farm, or things that are only about the city, things that are only about the farm. So the students were reflecting about this.
Mariani was saying about comparing, so that's what we were doing, right? City and farm life, comparing, contrasting what they don't have in common and what they do have in common. Is important to use the Venn diagram to illustrate. That's why it's visual organizer. Thank you for your contribution. These are, yes, Priscilla, students interview each other about their likes and dislikes, and we can use the Venn diagram to find a common ground between them, right? We have here, those are more common, and you can use it, a bar graph, and we show frequency and quantity. This bar graph would be a great idea for you to use in interviews. When we are asking someone who can swim, and then we have amount of students who can swim and students who can't swim, and then we have a bar graph with the information. Binary key to divide information, a Carroll diagram to sort yes or no information according to two sets of criteria, a cycle to show a series of events that happen again and again. Mind map is great when you are trying to brainstorm relationship between when we want to ask students, travel, what comes to your mind when you think about travel? And then you do a mind map with the main focus in the middle, right? Flow chart to show a series of, show the order of a process. The grid to show locations of places. Line graph is very similar to the bar graph, but instead of being, it's a line. Pie chart, it's all related to analyzing information, right? Cause and effect diagram is a cause and effect relationship. Quadrants to show connection between four concepts, high, low, loud, quiet. Sorry, it was supposed to come before. Number 14, what it was is a table. Table is to classify information. Storyboards are great for telling a story. T-chart, timeline. When do we use a timeline? Can you give me an example of when you have used a timeline? When you're telling a story, maybe? Past tense, Layana. Yes. Evolution of hominids, sequence of events, prehistory and history. Great. Timeline is important for related to history, right? A famous person. Great. Now let's think about those visual organizers and CLIL, the content we are teaching students, all of those visual organizers. Let's do a mock test time now. And there are multimedia explanations as well and reasons behind them. Some reasons can be used more than once, so you can repeat the answer. Match the example with the reason. The reason is letter A to E. The teacher uses a PowerPoint presentation to introduce a new curricular topic. What's the reason behind that? You can answer it. Letter C. Everybody thinks it's letter C. It is letter C, but it could also be letter A. How is Cambridge going to accept that? Cambridge is going to accept both answers. Letter C, if you put letter C, they'll consider it correct. If you put letter A, they'll consider it correct. All right? But for me, it makes more sense letter C. I think it's more to the point. Number 2, learners word process text in a computer lab. What's the letter? You can answer it. What's the keyword that makes you think is letter D? What's the keyword? Produce. Not only produce, but what Priscilla has just said it, written work. In number 2, they are going to process what? Texts. So it is letter D, the only answer. Number 3, learners do web searches in small groups. What's the letter? Yes. Letter E. Encourage learner autonomy, right? In small groups, they are going to be in charge of the web searches, so it is letter E. Number 4, the teacher inserts images and visual organizer on a worksheet about life cycle? What's the letter? Could it be another answer? Is there something else that comes to mind when you think about that? B, maybe? Letter C? Is only letter A. Ha. Tricky question. Yeah, but a life cycle, the visual organizer of a cycle, remember, is the arrow. It's not a table. But you maybe possibly get confused by it, but it's not a table. Yeah. And the last one, use database to report on results of a survey. What's the answer? Now is B. When you have a survey, which visual organizer is possible for you to use it? Could you use any of those two? A survey? What about those? Would a binary key be a possible way to analyze information in a survey? Maybe. When they have possible answers, questions. Yeah, bar graph would be amazing for that. Also, which one over there? Line graph, pie chart. Those are the visual organizer, the table, classifying information or for summarizing. Those would be great examples for you to use on a report. And we have a table. Table would be one of the options for you to enter the results. Yeah? We have many options, but a table is also one of those options, right? So we mixed here multimedia. We have PowerPoint presentation, worksheet, database. This is the multimedia aspect of a lesson planning. And then we include types of visual organizer. They are going to be connected together, right? Do you have any questions so far, guys? And materials. Selecting a material for a CLIL lesson and adapting. What should we ask about CLIL materials? Are the materials appropriate for the age? Fit for purpose? Do they match a learning outcome? Is it linked to CLIL aims? Do they consider content, communication, cognition, and culture? Is this CLIL material complete? The demands of cognitive tasks is important to consider. Is it supportive? Do they have word banks, language frames, and visual? Because my student may not know that language, that information. So is it friendly, user-friendly? Is it varied in skills, tasks, and interaction? Is it collaborative, challenging, and achievable? Is it motivating and complete? Those are important questions we have to ask when we are considering CLIL materials. So the last one, is it complete? Do they have word banks in here? Do they have word banks, language frames, and visual? What type of difficulty do you have every day in your lesson that you have to adapt something to fit that student that is having difficulty? Have you ever had to include images for that vocabulary you know your students don't know? What about dictionary definition for a word? Word bank. Sometimes we had to adapt. Yeah, always images and word banks, Mariani. Sometimes we have a bit complex structured texts, storytelling. Maybe the story you need to teach vocabulary before. And then we have to guide our students. And who else can tell me who is the best person to know their groups? The teacher. The teacher is a person who knows, who has the contact with the students throughout the entire year, and you know what difficulty your student might have. So you have to adapt the material, sometimes all the lessons, sometimes not all of them, but you have to consider the adaptations you might need to do. And when I have here ways of adapting a CLIL material, a diagram, when would you consider adding a diagram? In what context? Which context would you highlight key content vocabulary? You highlight the key content vocabulary before your students need them. Removing unnecessary details. There's nothing worse for a student than a teacher who over explains something and then they cannot do an activity because of that. So sometimes we have to decide to remove from the material unnecessary information because it might only confuse our students. And paraphrase words. Paraphrasing, we have to consider that English and Latin languages, such as Portuguese, we have some words in common that are more Latin inclined and is very similar to Portuguese. So there might be a word in English that is very difficult for them to understand, but you have that word that's very similar in Portuguese that you can use to make their lives easier. So for questions 1, 2, and 3, you have to match what your students said that they couldn't do the activity, and then you are going to say what you should do as a teacher to make their lives easier. All right? Number 1. What's the possible letter? A, B, C, or D? You can answer it. B or D? I've tried to guess the words in the explanation, but I just can't understand them. It is letter D. I understand the picture, but the words, they don't help me. So remove them. It's just confusing your student in this case. So it is letter D. Sorry, letter D is paraphrasing, right? Yeah, paraphrasing. So the words in the text is, sorry, Kasia, I got confused. The words in the text are not at the level of the student. So you have to rewrite. Rewriting the words in order for them to understand the picture. So it is letter D. So sorry. Number 2. What's the answer? What's the keyword in number 2 that makes you think the answer you think is the answer? The most important. Number 2, there are so many words in this report. You could highlight the words that are more important, or you could remove unnecessary detail. How can we know which one are the most important ones to learn? They want to know, they don't want to understand the whole thing. They want to know, the question is, how can we know which are the most important one? They want to know which word is important. So you have to highlight the key content vocabulary. Which words are more important? Most important words. Yeah. Number 3. What's the answer? Nothing to help us understand it. How can you help them understand it? Adding a diagram. If it is a process, they want to know a cycle, they want to visualize. So adding a visual organizer, a diagram will help them with that, right? Now the last topic of the day. Which activity types can you think of? Think about the activities we are doing today. The types of questions. We are doing a lot of matching. Matching is a type of activity. Is it? It is. So interview is a type of activity. Asking questions, right? So here we see some examples. Labeling, matching, multiple choice, ordering true and false, gap fill. These are type of activities. But when do we categorize something? It was something that we talked about, I think, on our last discussion. What's the difference between categorizing and labeling? When do we do a clause test? We need to provide activities for communicating subject content orally, for developing listening, supporting written and physical production. That's the purpose of doing those activities. Okay? True and false. True and false, where can I use a true and false activity? Can you think of an example? I want to know an example of true and false that you have used in the classroom. Yes, Cassia. Caroline.
After a reading, they have to check the statements, true or false.
Yeah, that's what Caroline said. Text understanding. So you have read something, and then you're trying to see if your student got the context of it. Is it true or false, right? What about labeling? In what type of class, what type of CLIL class lesson would you use labeling? That's the example I was going to say, Mariani. Science, we think about body parts, and then we have a human body, parts of the body, layers of the earth, Alex. Yes. You have to label which layer is related to that. And then you have the image, right? Insect, you've used. That's great, Cassia. Parts of a plant, a life cycle of a plant. We see that in Educate, the first year. We have a life cycle of a watermelon. And we have when you put the seed, when you water it, you might need to put what part of the process it is. So, yeah, water cycle, planets in the solar system, yeah, all great examples. So let's check. Mock test time exercise, you know how it is because we are training for taking a test. So it's important for us to exercise. We have the purpose of the teacher. We have why the teacher is using that activity. And then we have a multiple choice activity. You have to choose between A, B, or C. Choose the activity which matches the teacher's purpose. The teacher wants to activate prior knowledge of a subject. That's the purpose. But which activity will I use it? You can answer it. Is letter B. Mind map to put information about trees in all the boxes. Letter B. How do you activate what students already know about that? They use a mind map. So the example I just gave, travel. What vocabulary do they know related to travel? Airport, baggage, passenger, pilot, flight attendant. So you understand the topic and they will use a mind map for you to understand what they already know. Yeah, great. And a mind map is also a type of what? Visual organizer. So we saw visual organizers in multimedia, and we also see it here in types of activities. It's all integrated, all right? Let's go to number 2. The teacher wants to check the learner's understanding of key subject specific vocabulary. Vocabulary, key subject specific. You can answer it. C, A, maybe B. Check the learner's understanding of key subject specific vocabulary. In small groups, learners play a loop game with mathematical words and their definition. Letter B, nobody said letter B. Maybe letter C. Individually, learners write the coordinates of 4 mathematical shapes into a gap fill activity. Letter A. Why would they put the coordinates? If you want to know if they understand the subject, the what vocabulary, guys. What you have here, vocabulary, and then you have what? Mathematical words. That's the connection between the purpose and the activity. Yeah.
You know what I was wondering. Let me see. Is my working?
Sorry. Can
you listen to me?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't thinking about that part. What called my attention was in small groups, in pairs, or individually. I was focusing on that, and no,
it was a tricky part.
Yeah, there was my mistake.
You could do it in small groups, you could do it in pairs, or you could do it individually. It doesn't matter the pattern, the interaction pattern.
Yeah,
what
I understand.
matters is vocabulary and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It would be a great idea if they could do the mathematical words individually. I think it would be better. I would choose to do it individually. But it doesn't matter in this case.
Yeah, because I was focused, well, but if she wants she or he wants to check the learner's understanding, maybe she would want that individually. Then that's why I focus.
I totally understand, Marianne. And that's what Alex said. He focused on individually, but not what they wanted. He wanted to know about vocabulary, and then we have mathematical words. Yeah. So let's go to number 3. Similarities and differences. What's the letter? Letter B. Is it letter B? Why do you think that? What word or sentence stands out? Yes. We have just discussed about the Venn diagram. Similarities and differences. We have one little circle, another circle, and then we see what is in common and what is different between the two of them. So it is letter B, Venn diagram. Yeah. Any questions about that? It was a bit easier, right? As a reminder, I'd like to say that that's the basis of our discussions. We have here the TKT CLIL Cambridge exam, Cambridge English. The website from Cambridge is also important for you to study, and of course the Formação Continuada platform, right? The certificate. We have here the link and the QR code. Remember to copy the link. It's better to copy the link instead of clicking on it. Let me just open, sorry, let me just close it here. Yes, I'll send the link here, just a second. Let me get it. You receive the certificate until tomorrow. By tomorrow, you receive it. And we'll see each other again in November. Please let me know if you have any other suggestions for our debates. It's important for you to share what you liked, what you didn't like. Maybe next time, would you like to use Kahoot? Are you like your students that love Kahoot? I can include them here and make our dynamic a little bit different. Yeah, we are always trying to improve our discussions here. I'd like to, so can you please, Priscilla, put their Kahoot, include Kahoot, Natalia, and I'd like to thank you all for being here with me for an hour and 30 minutes. We had 30 participants, so it's a great number. Thank you all again, and see you next time. If you had any problems accessing the link, please stay here, and then maybe you can send me your email and I can send it to you there. Mariane, can you type your email, please?